I just watched a YouTube video about Mexico getting strict on immigration enforcement. It's on the channel Two Expats in Mexico, and I'll link to it at the end of this video. Watching Paul's video inspired me to make this video about how easy it is to screw up driving or walking into Mexico, and you can even screw up when you fly in. And then you end up getting caught up in the immigration enforcement that Paul talked about. So I'm going to share my story and how you can get it right. Here's my wife and I in our RV approaching the Mexico border at Mexicali. Every other time that we've driven into Mexico, we just drove right across the border in Tijuana. But we just bought a house in Mexico and we're about to become part-time Mexico residents. So now I've done my research and I know that we cannot leave this checkpoint without a very specific paper stamped in a very specific way. And I have a pit in my stomach as the lights and buzzers start sounding.
Something is ringing. I don't know if that's a good sign or a bad sign.
Crossing the border into Mexico as an American or a Canadian is usually easy. Too easy. So easy that I'd guess that most people don't get the necessary visitor permit. And that can be a real problem a few hours south of the border. I've recently read Facebook posts from people who drove 8 hours south only to be turned around at a military checkpoint and sent back to the border to get this permit. I wasn't about to become one of those people, and I'm going to share how you can avoid it too. I've also learned about the fines people get when they lose their permit and then try to fly out. And there are even stories of Americans who've been deported recently because they didn't have the proper paperwork. Americans and Canadians who are not residents of Mexico need an FMM to travel in Mexico. I'll talk more about what us residents need to do later in this video. If you're only there for 7 days or less, this is a free permit, and you can get an FMM valid for up to 6 months for about $30. Lots of people call it a tourist visa, but that's not technically correct, but I don't want to go into that in this video. When you fly into Mexico, the flight attendant hands you the FMM forms, one per person, and the immigration officials at the airport process it for you. You don't need to think. The cost of the permit for up to 6 months was added to your plane ticket already, and you won't make it out of the airport without processing your paperwork. I've got more for you airline passengers in a second, but let's go back to crossing on foot or by car. These folks in uniform at the border often don't mention the FMM form at all. They might be customs or military trying to keep guns or ammunition from being smuggled south. I don't know how many times I visited Mexico without even knowing that this form existed and never seeing a human being at the border that I could ask about it. Mostly I was going to the border areas like Tijuana or Matamoros, and I never had a problem. But if I had gotten into a car accident or interacted with the police or driven further south, there would have been problems. If you get into a car accident, your insurance could claim that you were in the country illegally and not pay out. By the way, be sure to get Mexican car insurance if you drive into Mexico. 99% of the time, your US insurance will not cover you in Mexico, and not having insurance in Mexico is a big no-no. Okay, so how do you get this permit when driving or walking across? You need to find a SAT or INM office at the border crossing. If you encounter an agent, maybe customs or military, you can ask for SAT or just say FMM. F-A-M-A-M-A in Spanish, and they will point you in the right direction. That's what happened to us when we were driving south in our RV. A military-looking guy flagged us into a parking spot. He saw me filming and told me to stop, then got in our RV via the back door. This is where I started thinking, shit, what's he gonna steal? Our money was split into 3 different hiding places. Should I get out my camera and start filming now, or should I wait until things go sideways? Would he find our 3rd computer? You're only allowed to bring 1 computer per person across the border. But he just asked to see what was in a few boxes, then said we were free to go. However, I knew that I needed that FMM, and I was kind of surprised that I remembered what with all my overactive imagination and anxiety going on. So I said, F-A-M-A-M-A with a question mark at the end, and he told me to leave my vehicle where it was and walk into the office about 20 yards away, where I tried to make it super clear that we were in the residency process, so we needed a special 30-day permit. By the way, I chose Mexicali after Googling and watching YouTube videos, including one that said, be sure to get in the right-hand lane with your RV.
Okay, so I think we go in 1 or 2. Nada, nada, nada. Can't go that one.
that one either. Dude, just pick one.
Okay, well, we can go in this one. This is tight. One kind of wide to the left.
I'm trying. Am I good?
Yep, I think you're good. Yep.
You can fill out and print up the form online in advance. There's a link below. But you still need to get it stamped at the border. We filled out our paper forms in the office. The immigration agent keeps part of the form and hands back the other part. You're supposed to keep this with you at all times while in Mexico. Don't lose it. It's 2021 and the Facebook forums about Mexico are filled with people talking about being asked for their immigration papers randomly by police. So what if you're a permanent or temporary resident? If you have your green card, which is not technically a green card, but just a card that happens to be green, you don't need to stop at immigration. But if you are in the process of getting your card, which is what we were doing in my story, you must stop at immigration because you will need that FMM to complete your residency process. I've heard of people flying from La Paz back to Tijuana to get the permit that they failed to get when they drove across the border. Ouch. But to those of you who flew into Mexico, if you are flying out, you will need to turn in that little piece of paper they handed back to you when you entered. If you don't have this little piece of paper, you'll need to go buy a new one for $30, cash in pesos, at the airport, just so that you have something to turn in when checking in for your flight 5 minutes later. Whenever I fly through Cabo San Lucas, there is always a line of people who need to do this. The reason I'm so familiar with this line is that as a permanent resident of Mexico, I need that form to exit the country by plane. It's free for residents, but you don't get to skip the line. So yes, we are permanent residents. We got the right stamp at the border, we converted our FMMs into green cards, and we absolutely love living in Mexico. I promised a link to Q RuPaul's more detailed video about the current immigration stuff going on in Mexico. You can check out his video over here. Or if you're a resident of Mexico, you can learn about how to get a $30 refund from the airline each time you fly into Mexico. Hint, you'll just need to ask for a refund of the FMM fee that was built into your ticket price. Hasta luego.